Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is John Bullard with another fun-filled episode of Pro Wrestling Tonight, and with me is the one and only, the wild man cowboy himself from the Badlands of Montana, the one and only Phil Early. Phil, thank you for being on the show with us, and how are you doing?
I'm pretty good today. How you doing, John?
You know what? I'm doing pretty good. We're here at the studio, and I'm glad we finally got a call. Trying to get you for shows is so difficult. You're always out on the ranch. You're always out doing your tours. Your people have to understand something about Phil Early. Not only is he a talented professional wrestler, but you also play music as well. You do all types of different movie projects. You're a pretty busy guy. So I'm glad we got a hold of you, got your schedule to come on in and sit down with us for the show. So thank you for being part of it. For the fans at home that had the chance to watch the last taping of Saturday Night Grapple Masters here in Michigan City, Indiana, you made your debut for Chicagoland Championship Wrestling, and you came out and faced down Paragon and Chris Moore in the Tribunal.
Yeah, I did. I don't really like Paragon. I've known Paragon for years now. I find him arrogant. I find him overbearing, and honestly, I find him a little bit too full of his own crap. Um, so when I saw Paragon coming down on No Coast, and that was a very savage beating they gave him. That was an
Oh yeah,
incredibly savage beating. It was uncalled for. If you already won the match, you won the match. You win the match and you get out. You do your job. You act like a professional. You don't sit there and you take liberties. They were taking liberties. Triiibunal was taking liberties. And just from where I stand, I don't tolerate bullies. I don't tolerate any of that. And so, yeah, I interrupted his little party and I broke it up. Me and Marche Rocket.
yeah. I mean, you guys really helped save the day because after that match was over with, Joe Blues took Brian Kraser to the hospital, and Brian was laid out for quite a long time, out of action, with both in ring and also just his daily life. I mean, they crush his lyrics. They end up causing a lot of damage. He was not able to talk for 3 weeks alone. I mean, it's when you see someone like, okay, like you said, yourself. Okay, you won the match. Okay, great. No
Yeah.
Coast came out on top of that match, but that makes it even worse because then the guys who lost took it in their hands to get revenge. And the whole feud between those two guys, it started out as just a friendly joust of some humor. No Coast is known for being comical kids, and
Mm.
just seeing their humor got under Paragon's skin so bad for him to turn around and inflict that type of damage on him was uncalled for.
No, completely, 100% uncalled for. Um, Joe and Nick, they're great guys. Sorry, Joe and Brian. Joe and Brian. They're great kids. They're great guys. When you're in the back in the locker room, they're usually the nicest ones. They're the first ones to introduce themselves, and they're usually some of the last ones to leave.
Yeah.
And in wrestling, that counts. That counts big time. And when you get a prima donna like Paragon, who is not approachable, who is not professional, who is in it for himself and not for the show as a whole, that's just where we start crossing lines. And I was taught much different. I trained under Rip Rogers. I trained under Tracy Smothers. I trained under legendary Larry D. And they instill in you a respect for the old ways. You come up, you help set up the ring, you help tear down the ring, you shake everybody's hand, you act like a professional while you're there. The show isn't around, it's not the Paragon show, it's Chicagoland Championship Wrestling. It's not the Triiibunal hour, it's Chicagoland Championship Wrestling. And I think he's lost sight of that, to be honest.
When you was talking about how you became a professional wrestler, so you literally started out in the state of Montana, your home state, the place you was born and raised. So take us a little bit on the journey of who was Phil Early.
Well, I didn't start wrestling until my 30s. Unlike a lot of people, they start in their 20s. I started late, and the main reason why is there's not a pro wrestling school in Montana. The closest is in Denver or in Sioux Falls, and both of those are, I think, like 12 hours away. I actually, I was 30, 31, and my older brother, Ryan, he died. He passed. Very young age. age of 36. And it was kind of a catalyst for me. It helped me realize that life is incredibly short. And unless I start taking chances now and acting on my ambitions, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. And I sold a large majority of my belongings to come down here, live in my car, and train at OVW with Rip Rogers and Matt Cappotelli. I had a really good year there. I learned a lot, and then I started branching out and just, taking bookings wherever I could. And ever since then, man, we're doing the train. We're doing the thing. We've been doing the thing ever since. I've had a couple of setbacks, but I think that's anybody that's ever tried to accomplish anything. I've had multiple fractures and multiple injuries, but every single time I get hurt, I keep coming back. And every time I come back, I'm a little bit smarter and I'm a little bit more dangerous. And honestly, Paragon should really be remembering that fact right about now, because I don't think he is. I don't think he's taking me into consideration at all right now because he's too busy dealing with all his other problems. But honestly, Paragon, it should be me you watching, not Steve. Don't pay attention to the announcers. You look at Dad. Don't look at them. You look at Dad. You can pick on an announcer. You can pick on a commentator. You can pick on all these people that aren't wrestlers. But when it comes down to you facing a wrestler, I'm the one that you have to look at. So you look at me when I'm talking to you, Paragon, and you look at me when I'm wrestling you.
Some very choice words. So when he was training under Rip Rogers, he was one of the greatest trainers of all time in professional wrestling. You started venturing with the one and only, the late, great Tracy Smothers. Of course, today is the anniversary of when we lost Tracy. One of the greatest men ever in pro wrestling. I was lucky myself to become a friend of his over the years. And what was that like being on the road with one of the greatest wrestlers of all time?
I wish I would have taken more photographs. I wish I would have spent a little bit more time making actual logs of it all. I only have, a handful of photographs and videos with him because I would spend so much time just listening to him. And I forgot, like, oh man, someday this isn't going to be around anymore. You better, I was just too busy listening to him, because when you're in the car, he's talking nonstop. And he's talking with you and he's talking at you, and it's all positive stuff. It's all stuff that you can learn from. It's all very, very, very good. But the main thing that I can take away from Tracy is that, one, he never forgot a single face he ever met. Not
That's
once
true.
in his life.
That is so true. Yeah.
You could have ran into him at a gas station 12 years ago, introduced yourself, hi and goodbye. He'd remember you. He would. And the fact that he took the time with everybody like that speaks, that pretty much is all you really need to know. Honestly, if you want to talk about the guy's heart and his soul and his motivations and just who he was. Because I've never met anybody in wrestling that had a bad word to say about him. I don't know. He really enforced telling that story, making sure that the audience walks away with everything they expected and more. The money that they're paying, that's supposed to go in our pockets, and we have to earn that. But the best way to earn it is to establish an emotional connection with your audience, therefore motivating them to stick their hand in their wallet and buy a ticket to see you. And you get that by being a professional. You get that by being a good person. You get that by being a decent person. It just comes full circle to what we were already talking about being a professional inside and outside of that ring. Tracy, there was never a better professional wrestler inside or outside of the ring. Never.
Yeah, I agree. When I first met him, it was actually through friendship with my friend Ian, who was a former wrestling manager. He actually managed Tracy on a bunch of shows in Iowa, Illinois area for a long time. And, of course, I grew up watching Tracy on television for over the years. And we did a few shows in Knoxville, Tennessee, but it was when I was a radio host with my friend Ian on his show. And he was like, hey, man, we got Tracy Smothers on the show coming up. I'm like, oh, man, it's going to be great. And it was like literally 3 hours of Tracy stories. And anytime we have like another guest who come on the show, Tracy would be like, oh, man, brother, you remember back in like 1975, there you were, black Cadillac. driving down the road and he was, doing this and this and this and that. And people were like, how do you remember this stuff, man? Like you're right.
Mm-hmm.
He had a memory of an elephant. It didn't matter if you was a nobody or you was a somebody. He remembered everybody. And
Everybody.
yeah, and then what I love about Tracy was how he made everyone feel like a somebody around him. He never made
He
anyone
would.
feel like they were lesser than him. He was him and Bob Evans both I've noticed will always build someone up. So tearing them
They
down.
always will.
The,
Mm-hmm.
the great ones always do that. How can I help you out? How can I make you a better person? And I watch, not trying to get off topic, but I watched when Bob did a seminar. Every time a kid would make a mistake, Bob would say, "Hey, I watched you perform a couple of weeks ago. You do fantastic. You're wonderful. How about you do this and try it and see what happens?" He never said, "Oh, you screwed up on this," or "Oh, you did this wrong." Nope. It's always like, "Hey,
Nope.
I know your potential. You could be great. Try this."
Yeah.
And I remember seeing how Tracy taught guys same way. "Hey, man. Hey, I think you have it, man. You got it, kid. You got it."
Yeah.
He would always make you feel at home around him. He never made you feel like you were lesser because you didn't have the same experience as him or he wasn't a name established in the business. He was someone who always made everyone feel like they were part of his family. And when we
Yeah.
lost him, I think it was a tremendous loss for not only just our business but for life in general. We lost a great guy. It was very
Oh yeah.
misunderstood by a lot of people because he was a very loving, down to earth guy.
Yeah, and a lot of people didn't realize that. They're too busy looking at the performer, not the man.
Yeah, the
See what I'm
performer and the
saying?
man was two different characters. All
Very, very two different people. And the first time I met him, he wouldn't stop asking me questions. Like, oh, kids, so where are you from there? What do you do there? How long have you been? He was genuinely
interested.
excited to get to
Yeah,
know me.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
He wanted to know everything. Where are you from? Where were you born? This, and I was overwhelmed by that. I didn't know how to actually handle it. So this, that, and the other thing, and then I think we went to Lincoln, Illinois that night. I was in the car with him and his daughter Jessie Bell, and we finished the show. We do, we drive back and all that, and he gives me a call about a week later. Hey, Phil, you're a good guy. I was, wondering if you wanted to drive up with me to Cincinnati. Yeah, I'll drive up with you. And that became like a weekly thing. We'd meet outside this fish place in Louisville, and we'd pick him up and his lawyer up, and we would just go hit towns.
Yeah.
And some of the best times of my entire life. And like I said, I wish I would have taken more pictures. I wish I would have taken more video, because those were those days that you look back on going, those were the best times. Those were the best. And you can't ever get them back.
No.
And yeah, I mean, I think when he passed, it wasn't just a big loss for people that lost a friend. I think the pro wrestling world lost one of its best mentors and teachers ever.
Yeah, I agree.
Nobody went out of their way to try and help other people become a better wrestler than Tracy Smothers. Nobody. For free, even. Like the knowledge he would give to people, other people are charging in seminars. You know what I'm saying? Not all seminars, but he seriously would just pass on all this invaluable knowledge that people would pay money for, but he would never charge. I can't even, I'm sure he had them, but I can't even remember a Tracy Smothers gimmick that happened, a seminar that happened, because he was too busy just doing that on his own volition.
And people have to understand too, he was the last of a generation that worked the territories. He worked in Mexico, he worked in Japan, he worked in Europe, worked for WWE, he worked for WCW, ECW, and he's also historically the last man in pro wrestling to actually wrestle bears.
Yes, 3 of them.
3. He's the only man who's ever actually wrestled 3 and beat all 3. But he's the only. Yeah, I mean, that's not a gimmick. That's not a guy in a bear costume. That's real deal Appalachian black bears. And I think he wrestled in Terrible Ted, if I'm correct. I think Terrible Ted was actually a grizzly bear. So like for him to do what he did, I'm like, you look at it and go, who else has done this? And you're looking around the room like nobody. Okay, he's the only guy who's ever done this. Like
Yep.
what a legacy, what a story that the people who've never met him, like man, they really missed out. On
Yeah.
such a character and such a wonderful guy.
Well, something that nobody even talks about with the Bears, the last bear he fought wasn't even muzzled.
No,
It didn't have
yeah,
a muzzle.
yeah, it actually bit his hand.
And, yeah. And then I do believe it was the first or the second one he wrestled. He didn't even know he was wrestling a bear that night. He didn't know.
A prank was being pulled on him. He's like, oh yeah, I want to wrestle bears, sure. And he's thinking like a guy in a bear costume, like the guy in a gorilla suit. And it's like, no, Tracy, you're fighting like a real circus bear. Like, there's the handler, there's the cage, there's a bear in the cage. And people were trying to pull a rib on. They're like, yeah, you should put honey on yourself, and the bear will try to lick you instead of trying to like get aggressive towards you. And he's like, I'm not falling for that.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. So many. It's amazing that you had that experience of both Rip Rogers, Tracy. Talking about the great late Matt Cappotelli, another wonderful human being that was great to everybody who's ever met him. You've been.
I think Matt Cappotelli is the most underrated wrestler when it comes to who they were as a person, quite possibly ever. When it comes to training, any of that, he had the ability to take anybody's positives and make those positives look 10 times greater than they actually were. Hey bud, how you doing? I'm trying to do a show here. This is my big guard dog.
Hey, nothing wrong with having that. It's actually the first dog we've actually had on the show. So
well, you hear that, Titus?
You made some history tonight. So
you made some history, bud. Now go. I will tell you I love you later. But he's just making sure I still do. That's what he's got to do. When I first wanted to train, and I'm still stuck in Montana, saving up money to come up, I called OVW and spoke with him. And he walked me through the entire process of moving. Like, hey, if you wanted to get an apartment, here's a building, here's a building, here's a building. If you need to find a hotel, here's a hotel, here's a hotel. If you need me to pick you up from the airport, I'll get you from the airport. He didn't know me. He had no clue what I even looked like. I'm sure he didn't even know my name, but here he is. He's willing to pick me up from the airport. He's willing to drive me around and put all these applications into these apartments just because I'm somebody that wants to come down and train. And after I came down and trained, he went out of his way multiple times, and I do mean multiple times, to help me. On Saturdays, he would swing by my house, pick me up, and we'd go to church. Believe it or not, me and Matt Cappotelli in church. Only man in the last 20 years that's been able to get this Montanan in a church. Matt Cappotelli. I was in Bullitt County one time, which is outside of Louisville, and I blew a tire. And I don't have any friends out here. I didn't know anybody out here. So I called Matt, like, please come help me. And he was all the way in Jeffersontown, which is over an hour away, And he did. He came and he helped me change my tire. And he helped me find, like, that's just Matt Cappotelli,
Great human being. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And I've never heard, just like Tracy, I've never heard him say a bad word about anybody else because he never needed to. Even if he didn't like somebody, you wouldn't know because he's too busy throwing out that positive energy. And I think the fact that everything that he went through, that he did go through, and he managed to still want to give back and help other people in a business where it's very hard to see it and not be able to participate, especially if you were at the level that he was at. The day before he's about to debut on Raw, he finds out he has a brain tumor. You know what I'm saying? And anybody could have walked away. Anybody could have just left. And he wanted to give back. And he spent his last days giving back. He gave back as much as he could, knowing that he was on limited time. And honestly, there should be a Matt Cappotelli shrine in that building at OVW. There isn't. There should be. But I was very honored to call him a friend. I was very lucky to call him a friend. And I'm pretty sure that anybody that ever met him was his friend. Sorry, I could talk about Matt till the sun
No,
comes
hey,
down and
no reason
changed
to
my
apologize
life.
on that. No, I'm always been a huge fan of Matt Cappotelli as a person, and you know, a guy who I truly believe before getting his diagnosis, I thought he was going to be a star on the rise. You know, he
Yeah,
had the look, he had the ability. You know,
and he had the attitude.
yeah,
Yet Paul Heyman loved him. You know, if Paul Heyman's giving you your seal of approval, no matter what you think of the man, you got something.
yeah, it's a huge blessing.
Yeah, yeah, straight up. Um, just I was so lucky. I've been so lucky to have all these mentors. You know, between Matt, Tracy, Rip, you know, legendary Larry D. I got to work for his company for about a year and a half, and I learned a lot there. There's a guy nobody talks about though, and he was a Montanan, and his name was Sheamus the Famous. He was trained by Mr. Hughes, and he was signed to I think they called it Deep South Wrestling back then,
Yeah,
before
territory system
FCW.
for yep.
Yep, for WWE. On his first match, he ended up falling on his head on the outside. Traumatic brain injury. Never wrestled again. But him and this guy Lee opened up a school in Missoula, Montana, which was the first time I ever took bumps, first time I ever ran the ropes, all of that. But that school only lasted about 6 months because Sheamus, unfortunately, just like Matt, he died of a brain tumor due to traumatic head injury. So I've had a lot of trainers succumb to these things. Another guy that was a mentor of mine, Chris Silvio, he had a traumatic brain injury and it ended his career. He's still alive, thankfully, but you know, all these guys and all these influences, and one thing that they all had in common, in my opinion, is that they were very, very good people. And I could say the same about Sheamus the Famous. And I guess I just wanted to give him a shout out because nobody remembers him, and they really should remember him. I actually talked with Kofi Kingston once because they were roommates, and Kofi even said the same thing. There was nobody better than Sheamus. So, you know, the Sheamus, the Cappotellis, and the Smothers of the world. If we had more of them, we'd probably have the most thriving business on planet Earth.
Oh, I agree. I agree 100% with all that. I mean, you know, it's when you find good mentors, good teachers, and just good people in general. That's so awesome when you have that. You know, because not everyone has that blessing. Not everyone has that opportunity in life to actually have someone who not only knows what they're talking about, but they're willing to part that knowledge to make you a better person with it. And
Yeah,
it's a rarity. With
it is.
with you wrestling, you traveling the country, you've been wrestling all over the Midwest. I know you just came back from a fun show out there in Texas. You know, what is coming up next for Phil Early? What does 2022 have in store for Phil Early?
2022. Man, I am terrible at making plans. Ever since I was in Montana, you know, I kind of just I wing it. I improvise. This weekend I'm in Maryland. I'm in Wardolph, or is it Dolph War, something like that, Maryland.
Like
I got it, Wardolph. It's right by Washington D.C. Going into 2022, I'm hoping to hit a whole lot of towns, and I'm hoping to shake things up in Chicagoland Championship Wrestling more than just about any other place on planet Earth. I really, really, really am looking forward to the opportunity to take Paragon and shut him up. And there's a lot of people in CCW that could honestly be shut up. And that's nothing against you. I understand that, you know, you're just a businessman and you're doing what you got to do. But you got a lot of loudmouths there that really need those ego checks cashed. And I'd be more than happy to do that. More than happy.
I do know, like Paragon's watching us, looking over his shoulder for you, and I've also been told too that Johnny Nye and the Playboys didn't take too much of a liking to you as well.
Johnny Nye. I could tell you some about Johnny Nye. Johnny Nye really prides himself in being a musician. And what's funny is I'm a musician too, but the difference between myself and Johnny Nye is I make good music. I make good music. I've actually toured. I've actually sold records. He's sold records to his mama. He's sold records to his brother. He's sold records to his friends. But I'll tell you something, Johnny. You ain't on my level. Never have been, you never will be. But you do run your mouth like somebody who wishes he was. And anytime you want, anytime you're feeling froggy, jump. Jump. I will show you exactly why Montana is what Montana is. Sorry. Didn't mean to go off on that little tangent there.
No, not at all. I mean, I know he watches the program a lot, so this is things are going to be shaping up interesting. See what's going to happen in 2022. I know that we're looking forward to having you here at Chicagoland Championship Wrestling. Glad we had you here on Pro Wrestling Tonight, and most importantly, coming up, this could be to quote our broadcast play-by-play man, the wonderful Steve Arrett, that this might become the season of Phil Early. So it's going to be interesting to see what all transpires, and most importantly, Phil, we got about a minute and 30 seconds left of the show. I want to leave the floor to you and whatever you want to say to your fans.
I'm not really good at coming up with stuff on the fly, but I got a minute and a half, so let me just go ahead and say to the fans of CCW and to all three fans that I have, 2022 is going to be a lot of fun. I have a lot of things that I need to finish. I have a lot of things I need to start, and a lot of them all center around Chicago Championship Wrestling. So I guess this is me making a deal with you, the fans and the people that watch this show. When you go to Chicagoland Championship Wrestling, you're going to see me, and you're going to see me at my best. And you're going to see me giving you everything that I possibly can in order to make you feel like that ticket price was worth it, more than worth it, to where you would buy that ticket 1,000 times over and you wouldn't care. That's my job, and I want to do my job for you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is Phil Early. And Phil, thank you for being on the show with us tonight. And for all the wrestling fans, you want to check out this guy. Phil, what's the best way for fans to follow you on social media?
Well, if you want to follow me on social media, you can follow me on Twitter at Phil Early. That's PHILEARLEY 4. Phil Early 4. But it's Early, EARLEY, spelled incorrectly, and Phil with one L. If you want to find me on Facebook, you can find me under Phil Early or Dad Volante, DADDVOLNANTE. Took me a second there. Yeah, follow me on my social media. I upload cool videos, and I say lots of really, really fun stuff and bad jokes. Lots of bad jokes.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Phil, for being on our show. Ladies and gentlemen, me, everybody at Chicagoland Championship Wrestling, including this man, Phil Early, are all looking forward to seeing you all at ringside. See you then.